Welcome to Dark Sorcery. I'm Alfredo Martinez, and I have with me Michael Hyson. Michael Hyson, good to have you back on.
An honor.
And for those of you who don't know what it says in the background, follow and subscribe. And today, we are both going to be studying the Necronomicon. Now, you might have noticed that maybe 6-7 months ago, we had done a video. I had done a video with Guion Hughes on the Necronomicon, but I wanted to go ahead and get Michael Hyson's take on it. So right now, I have with me the Simon Necronomicon, and I have the Grimoire of the Necronomicon. Michael Hyson, go ahead and show up your collection there.
I've got Simon's Necronomicon,
Right.
the Necronomicon fragments, got the spell book, dead names, gates, the original by Lovecraft, and then L. Harat, probably just butchered that name, but okay. Donald Tyson's work, the True Grimoire, or the Grimoire of the Necronomicon, 13 Gates of the Necronomicon, and I have another one that I picked up at a store. It was one of those 1 in 1,000 finds in the book department of Martin's. It's just like a thrift store, if you want to call it that way. But yeah, this one's actually more, how should I say this, the pictorial, if you will.
See, now a few of those I didn't even know that they were out. Now, what's your take on the different these different versions and different adaptations, if you will?
Well, Lovecraft is more historical, in my opinion. As a historical fiction writer, which is what he's been, how should I say this? He's become known as a fictional writer. But if you actually take the time to study his perspectives on the details, you would understand that not only does astronomy play into effect, but you're also learning about the historical regional aspects of where the journey of the Mad Arab actually transpired.
Yeah.
And where it ended. But it also describes, and you actually see that in Simon's work.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that in a second. But you also break it down into each territory. I mean, if we go through, say, for an example, the hells from the Buddhist in Asia perspective, think of it as each territory or each world, each planet is ruled by a specific entity, like say Cthulhu or Cthulhu, depending on the translation, owns one, another one owns another, and so forth and so forth. Now, Donald Tyson's work is more sci-fi, fictional, like something you see out of Supernatural from Hollywood produced films.
Yeah.
But you can also play into D&D or the Star game from the ONA, if you will, type perspective of the work. Now, he actually took the Necronomicon and expanded on it, breaking it down into the different races, the different territorial regions, like the time travelers, those that dwell in the earth, such as the demons, if you will, or that came before, how the humans came, the gateways and the portals, all of that stuff he put in there. And he actually did a lot of great art, in my opinion, such as the gate. I mean, you go through any region in the world and you'll see the gates that lead to the city of the gods. One of which is very famous, and it's down in Brazil, right on a rock wall. Shows the city of the gods, and it's got a human handprint where you put your hand on it, and said that it opens up and can take you directly to the city of the gods. Now, personally, In my opinion, Simon's work is more for the adaptation of black magic, sorcery, necromancy. The reason for that is because he literally breaks it down into reality. And I'm going to say that flat out, reality. Okay. As a practicing necromancer, a practitioner of the arts for 30 years, this is the only one that I would practice from the Necronomicon, and this is why. Number one, he brings in the names. He brings in astrology, numerology. He brings in the rites and the rituals, and he brings down into the whispers or the mantras, if you will, the spells. He goes into the seals, the time of the years, the different opposing forces here. But he also breaks it down into the lieutenants, if you will, of what the practitioner can actually do.
Okay. Now, let me ask you a question about the Necronomicon spellbook. Now, I remember having the Necronomicon spellbook years ago and working with it. Now, from what I remember, yeah, that's it. Now, from what I remember, first of all, the 50 names of Marduk, that is a section in this book.
Correct.
From what I remember, it seems like the Necronomicon spellbook is just taking that portion from this book and then just made like a little mini book.
Basically,
yeah,
it would be like taking the demonic Bible and then taking it down into its more biblical, aspects of it.
Yeah.
Biology, or not biology, but what do they call that? A bio, if you will.
Okay.
Of the overtake or the third party view.
Now, what's your take on the supposed original Necronomicon from Abdul al-Hazred, or I think it was called Al-Azif?
Yeah.
What's your take on the original, and is there various copies throughout the world?
The original is one that I have not had a chance to get my hands on. I would love to sometime.
Yeah.
Word has it that it is very, very fragile. It is basically scroll-like. And it's one of those things where, like most texts, they come from scrolls. They come from old papers. They're so old that you have to handle with care. That's why they're in museums.
Yeah.
Today.
Well, because supposedly there's a copy in the British Museum and maybe one in France. Because back in the day, it was, I guess, copied into Greek. And then there were some copies made, I think some made into Italian, maybe one in German. There was a copy that was in San Francisco, but then it was destroyed in the fire.
Right.
I mean, is there the original manuscript somewhere out there?
Most likely, there's at least one.
Yeah. Because there's only supposed to be like maybe a few scattered throughout the world.
Right. You consider every single one, in my opinion, starts out in Mesopotamia, Babylonia area, and circles down through right into Greek and Roman, or how should I say this? What is now known as Roman, Italian region of the world. Because the journey of the Mad Arab started in January, the time of Aquarius. Okay, this is where we all know where great floods, devastations, political upheavals, all of this stuff was taking place. His journey from his village, and you can actually read Simon's Necronomicon between pages 7 and 12, if I remember correctly. You can actually break it down, and he did a real awesome job of a geographic display with astronomy and everything, because he brought in Venus, he brought in its disappearance, its reemergence, when all this stuff was taking place, the route that he went in, and like I said, very, very interesting.
Yeah.
But when you go back to the originals, the further back you go, the further away from the false perceptions, if you will, you're going to get, like in most things. I would love to get my hands on the original. I don't give a damn how much you have to pay for it, you know, but
Yeah.
I would love it. Now I have seen on Amazon and eBay, they have all kinds of different translations, each
Yeah.
one with a unique take on it.
There's a lot of speculation about the original document. Supposedly, if you read it, you lose your youth because the truth in it is so far from our understanding. You could easily go insane, or you just grow old fast because now you have the knowledge of what originally happened.
Right. And a lot of that is tied in with the dreamer, Cthulhu or Cthulhu.
Right.
And it is said that just him gazing on you will drive you insane.
Well, that's what makes it so enticing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Some people are like, "You're crazy for being into that." I'm like, you know what? That's just the appeal. That's what
Yeah.
makes
I
it
mean,
so.
for an example, I used to practice Simon's Necronomicon years ago.
Yeah.
And I actually had an apprentice who wanted to do a rite out in the middle of nowhere in the woods. And in the back of Simon's, you have the entire mainstream of the priesthood, the dedication and all that stuff. And I went through all of that in there. He and I went in around 10 p.m., midnight area,
Yeah.
around just before the time of the witches, and it was so funny. We had wildlife. You could hear the chirping of the crickets, everything. And then as soon I set up the candles, got the incense going, started doing the chants, started doing the ritual, and it just dead silence. And and he's sitting there freaking out, going. You could tell he had ants in the pants, so to speak, getting ready to rabbit.
Yeah.
And it was funny because all of a sudden the fluttering of wings started at our left, shot across to the right, went back, stopped dead in front, went up, down, and then went back to the left, and then just vanished. As we were leaving, gave the next person comes into this trail is a living sacrifice for you. And this was to Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Okay. To Cthulhu himself. So we took off, and as we're leaving, this guy walks in. We're driving home, and he just looks at me and says, "It's gonna suck to be that guy." Can you
it,
believe who said the
you know
next person
it's
walks in
it's
and there's
it's apparent when you do rites like in the woods or outside that the animals may respond.
oh
There's
yeah,
temperature changes where there shouldn't be, and just nature responds to the vibration and to the whole
yeah.
set.
You take the flapping of the wings of a hummingbird, for an
Yeah.
example. We've all heard how they that high frequency flapping. Picture that, but bigger.
Mhm.
That's what it sounded like. But
Wow.
yet we saw nothing. But
Yeah.
you knew it was there because the entire woods went silent. That was the only sound outside of me speaking and
It's
him
funny.
repeating.
We've all had experiences like that doing rites, but yet, someone, other people are like, they get freaked out, but we just keep going,
Yeah.
because I guess we just get used to it. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the Simon Necronomicon. And there's a passage that I wanted to mention. It's in the introduction in Roman numerals. It's number 21. Um, it's where it mentions a passage in the book of Job from the Bible.
Mm.
So let me know when you get to that.
Job 3:8.
Yeah, so it gives a passage from Job 3:8. It says, "Let them curse it that curse the day, who are skillful to rouse Leviathan. Now, I'm going to read this paragraph right here. It says, S.H. Hook, in his excellent Middle Eastern mythology, tells us that the Leviathan mentioned in Job and elsewhere in the Old Testament is the Hebrew name given to the serpent Tiamat, and reveals that there was in existence either a cult or scattered individuals who worshipped or called up the serpent of the sea or abyss. Indeed, the Hebrew word for abyss that is found in Genesis 1:2 is, Hook tells us, Tehom, which the majority of scholars take to be a survival of the name of the chaos dragon Tiamat in the Hebrew text. It is this Tiamat or Leviathan that is identified closely with Cthulhu within the pages of the Necronomicon, although both names are mentioned independently of each other, indicating that somehow Cthulhu is the male counterpart of Tiamat, similar to Absu. Now, how much truth do you think that there is in that statement?
There's actually quite a bit of truth. And if you actually go into various different regions, for an example, when you look at the very definition of hell, as we know it today, a lot of the times when you get into the biblical application of it, you have two different variants here that you see. One is a jail, the other is an actual prison. Okay, and that's more modern way of looking at it. So if you look at, say, for an example, let's go with Sheol or Jahannam, okay, or Gehanam, depending on the wording. I've seen it with a J and a G. Now, these would be classified as a prison, a jail. Whereas, say, for an example, hell, Hel in Norse mythology, or that of Hades in Greek, this would be classified as an actual physical place. It's like a holding cell. Okay, Gehenna would be an actual place of lake and fire, if you will, and it's an entrance that you have to go through to get to this location. So when we look at it from this perspective, and then we get into things like dragons or dinosaurs, to us it would be this hideous monster, but if you look at various different types of demons, for an example, such as Shirazan, Behemoth, for an example, you go into Tiamat or Leviathan, the gaping jaws, okay, and the representation of hell, of what you'd go through to go get into that region. Dante's Inferno, for an example, prime example. The gaping jaws of Leviathan, where all the souls go in through the gate. There is extensive historical and folkloric evidence that backs up that saying.
Okay, because that really caught my attention. And I like this edition because it has that introductory, all this scholarly work before you get into the actual Necronomicon.
That's why I actually that's why I recommend Simon's work over anyone else's, because he kept it true to the actual practice. And he backs it up with history, especially in his other books.
Okay, now I want to read a passage from the Grimoire of the Necronomicon. Just one sec here.
By Tyson.
Donald Tyson. So let's go to the Grimoire of the Necronomicon. Let's go to page 27.
All right.
Okay, so this is
Shub-Niggurath.
Shub-Niggurath. Alone among the greater and lesser lords of the old ones, Shub-Niggurath is female. She is the mother of monsters, the other lords of the old ones, and many other gods besides, such as the toad god Sathogwa, breed offspring in her womb, for she will lie with anyone who offers. Her common title is the goat with 1,000 young. Like the goat, she is ever ready to copulate. Azathoth, Lord of the Black Throne, whose true name must not be spoken, is her spouse, and they remain linked in perpetual sexual congress on a higher plane, so that the womb of Nigoroth is never empty, but forever spills forth its chaotic fruits. Yet she is an adulteress, and under the veil of Azathoth's madness, she lusts and is sated with marauders of strange gods. Now, is there a connection between Shub-Niggurath and the goat of Mendes, commonly found in witchcraft?
There is two variations that you can actually look at here.
Yeah.
First of all, the mother figure. This could be seen as Naama, Ishtar, or Lilith, the spouses or concubine aspects of both Satan and Samael, okay, of the Watchers, the archangels, type thing. The very definition is seen as an adulteress perspective, much like the Whore of Babylon in the Bible, Book of Revelations, chapter 13. It's ironic to see how most religions relate one figure in this manner as a historical perception. This goes all the way back to ancient Hebrew, ancient Islam or Aramaic traditions, the perceptions of a woman being loose, if you will, and that's the kind way of putting it. But on the other hand, when we're looking at a symbol, the greatest symbol would be seen from, like I said, the Book of Revelations, chapter 13, arrayed with diamonds, arrayed with all the finest silks. Okay, this is the symbol that most people would go by when they think of this figure. Okay, as a mother or as a adulteress, somebody who enjoys the pleasures of life. Okay, now Lilith, the curse of Lilith was to put forth 1,000 offspring a day, and each time the archangels would come down and wipe them out. That was the curse behind that. In this book, it's showing you her curse, but also what she's willing to go through because she wants that family. She wants that acceptance. But on the other hand, when we're looking at the goat of Mendes, the goat of Mendes was originally I want to say it was an island. It was a symbol on an island, like an Augulist type thing. And it was back in the, if I remember correctly, the 17th century. I may be wrong, so don't quote me on that. I want to say it was around the 17th century. And this actually came into play within Satanism because of the inverted pentagram aspects.
Right.
It was actually a goat that was the symbol of it. Now, if you go into the ancient texts of Jewish or Hebrew customs, you have a little rite called the Yip Kippur. This Yip Kippur became synonymous with the blemished goat. Again, it's associated with both Azazel and that of the big guy upstairs, so to speak.
Right.
And what this was is the blemished goat would be sent out into the desert to die, basically. But in this text, it shows where it goes down a rocky terrain. People would be standing at certain intervals, taking note and reporting back how fast or how far that animal got before it was no longer able to move. The goat of Mendes was associated with that, but so wasn't, what was his name? Sorry, my boy's up.
Yeah.
He was associated with, I want to say it was Saint Peter, who didn't want to die like his God, basically the Son of Man, and so he died on an inverted pentagram. Later, it was associated with Anton Zandalave's version of Satanism, the primary symbol, the inverted pentagram, which he associated with the Go to Mendes
Now,
application.
I thought that Saint Peter was crucified on an inverted cross, or was it?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
That I was just comparing the notion to it, because
Right.
anytime you get into a religious thing or a philosophical prospect, the inverted is always considered evil, vile, damnation sort of thing. Whereas being verted is considered to be good, light of God or whatever.
Right.
So even if you look at it from that perspective, why not stand in the center? Because that biasness will go away. And in that figure, when you look at this particular entity, this particular spirit, you can see her way of doing things is more freedom. It is by choice, her way of living.
Right.
And I really like that.
That is interesting. Now, let's go back to the Grimoire of the Necronomicon. Let's go to page 4. Let's talk a
Page
little
4.
bit. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the old ones.
All righty.
So I'm going to read a little bit from the second paragraph down. Long ago, the old ones made war against a time-spanning race from a world called Yith. Great is the power of the old ones, but greater still has the science of Yith, where all knowledge both past and future lay open to them. The Yithians banished to exile beneath the ground all those old ones who had dwelt on the surface of this world in windowless stone cities, sealing the entrances to their caverns with massive doors of black stone. There were other old ones not of the cities who took no part in the war, but fled into the heavens through the gates of Yog-Sothoth. The Yithians made no attempt to pursue them. In this way, the old ones were divided. Those bound to this world by the craft of the Yithians endure below, deep under the ruins of the bygone cities of the Time Lords. But the old ones who did not take part in the war continued to dwell in the airy heights between this world and the higher worlds. Only now and then, when the walls between worlds thin and the gates gape, do they descend to walk in wild places of old, unseen and known. And let's go a couple pages later. Let's go to page 9, and it's going to be the second paragraph from that. Page 9 says, the great work of the old ones is to sterilize the world of all life, purifying it so that it is made fit to elevate through the highest gate of Yog-Sothoth. Matter may, with some awkwardness, pass through the lower gates, but so much matter cannot be elevated through the final gate to the throne of creation. Only living matter that has become mingled with the substance of the old ones, and this way transformed into hybrids, half of humanity and half of the old ones, becomes fit for this transition. Couple paragraphs down. First, he must talk about Nyarlathotep. First, he must restore the rule of the old ones upon the earth. This he seeks to accomplish through the use of human agents and other agents who dwell in the deep places of the world that are not human. Now, is there anything else you can tell us about what we just read that was not mentioned? I thought that was an interesting portion.
They are interesting for sure.
About
there's a lot of material out there that speaks to something similar to this, and one of them is let's see here. I actually have that book. Let's see if we can find it real fast for you.
Yeah, no problem.
Here it is. Right here. The Devil's Apocrypha, for an example, was the best source that I ever came across. Okay. And as a demon relator, such as yourself, I know you'd actually like this one.
Yeah.
This was actually recommended to me by one of my teachers. And basically, when you look at the practice of where these gods come from, as you know, Donald Tyson breaks it down and he shows you where all these species come from. Okay, one from the stars, one from the future or throughout time. another one from inside the earth, one from the atmosphere, the whole kit and caboodle. But in this, all of these gods came from a different dimension or a different realm. Okay. And they all had their own gifts, their own perspectives. So when they came here, because their world was dying or their realm was dying, think of the Big Bang. Before, if we go to Genesis 1:1, we see this as a perspective of darkness was on the face of the deep. Okay. Darkness was on the face of the deep. So they came through. They came to our world and they realized that humans were here. They started over. Now, eventually, there is that rebellion factor that keeps playing into historical and folkloric traditions. Loki, if you will, the son of God, if you will, to the Pharisees or whatever. There's always that rebellion aspect. But if you think of it from a philosophical perspective, who's the one trying to enlighten mankind? Who's trying to elevate us to be like them? Lucifer, for an example, Phosphoros in ancient Greek. You got one god that puts himself above all others, and it becomes about slavery, control, domineering, jealousy.
Interesting.
What you just read there is truth.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to check out that book.
I recommend it.
Now let's jump back to the Simon Necronomicon and let's go to page 69.
Page 69?
Yeah.
I'm there.
Okay, so at the very bottom, it says the Watcher comes from a race different from that of men, and yet different from that of the gods. And it is said that he was with Kingu and his hordes at the time of the war between the worlds, but was dissatisfied and did cleave unto the armies of Marduk. Now, there are some people who disagree who the Watchers were, what they are. What's your take on that?
Well, if we're going by today's standpoint, the Watchers were the first order of angels. They were not of the gods and they were not of the mankind. Their duty was to watch over. Think of the Grigori, for an example, in angelology. They were superior. They were a race of warriors, pure warriors.
Right.
They were the elite. Think of special forces or Three Musketeers compared to the regular King's Army.
Right.
Every philosophy worldwide has something similar to this, the Valkyries, if you will, in Norse mythology. When we look at this, we see them as being an elite watchers, and they are not of either race, but they were willing to fight with them. If we go into Norse mythology, we see where there are 9 realms. Some realms aligned for a common goal. Others chose to, like the Dark Elven, would rather be on the opposite side of that. Think Satan, if you will, today. And yet no text actually says they're the enemy of God.
Right.
So we look at it, we're looking at it from a perspective of alignment, making allies, being teachers and guides, philosophers, if you will.
I see. Now, would you say that? I'm sorry to cut you off. Would you say that they're the same Watchers that are mentioned in the Bible?
I'd have to agree with E.A. Coetting on this one and say you see the same group moving from region to region. So yeah, I would have to say in that sense that yeah, I'd have to concur with that.
Okay. Yeah. Now, what can you say about Abdul al-Hazred's supposed death, where he was in the marketplace and all of a sudden this portal opens up and he was ripped to shreds by some entity? What's your take on that story?
Well, That one there, it is definitely a possibility, especially if he made a pact.
Right. Because I will
I
say
mean,
that portals are.
demonolatry, they
Go
would
ahead.
send a hellhound, a
Yeah.
Boogarist after you to collect your soul.
Mm,
Okay. Even if we go into Lovecraft's perspective, there was a lot of howling, a lot of screaming, but yet what did they find? Nothing but blood.
yeah.
It's a repeating history.
Mhm. Yeah. No doubt if you know, don't mess up the offerings or don't do some of the rites the correct way, these entities will destroy them.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It's basically becoming an outcast, basically. You've
Mm-hmm.
been deemed unfit, unworthy, and they're taking back what they gave you as a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Hands
Interesting.
down.
Well, looks like we're out of time. Thanks again for coming on. This has been
Hey,
a very
anytime. Thanks for
interesting,
having me.
yeah, very interesting discussion. Anything that you're working on right now? Anything you want to plug?
Not really. I'm just going more and more into spirituality, other dimensions, other planes of existence, getting further and further into spiritual and psionic warfare practices, getting into ascendance, the whole king caboodle there, and just staying away from the mundane world as much as possible.
Yeah, we all need that from time to time.
Yeah.
From time to time, I've done that
I'm
myself.
basically literally on my 7th month of a 2 year and 3 month spiritual journey.
Very nice.
Yeah.
But thanks once again for coming on. Always a pleasure to
Okay.
have you on. And everybody who's watching, like and subscribe to Dark Sorcery.